The Stone Zone with legendary Republican strategist and political icon and pundit Roger Stone. Stone has served as a senior campaign aide to 3 Republican presidents. He is a New York Times best-selling author and a longtime friend and advisor of President Donald Trump. As an outspoken libertarian, Stone has appeared on thousands of broadcasts, spoken at countless venues, and lectured before the prestigious Oxford Political Union and the Cambridge Union Society. Due to his 4+ decades in the political and cultural arena, Stone has become a pop culture icon. And now, here's your host, Roger Stone.
Welcome, I'm Roger Stone, and yes, you are back in the Stone Zone. Well, as Donald Trump himself said the other day, this fight that began 9 years ago culminates today. Never have we had such a consequential election in the history of our country. Never have the two parties been further apart in terms of their vision for America. They've really become quite different than the traditional stances. There was a day, for example, that the Democrat Party was anti-war. The Democrat Party stood up for civil liberties. The Democrat Party stood up for Israel. The Democrat Party stood up for free speech. Those days, quite sadly, are over. There was also a time that the Republican Party was the party of big business, the party of Wall Street, the party of the country clubs, the party of the ruling elite. That's no longer true either. So now we have, for the first time, I think, a clash between two very different philosophies and ideologies. The Democrats offer you authoritarianism. No matter what they say about democracy, they want to erase your right to free speech. They want to take away your guns, which are guaranteed to you under the Second Amendment, and they just want you to go along and do what you're told. The Republican Party has become the party of the middle class, the party of working people, the party of putting America first. The Democrat Party, as Robert F. Kennedy so eloquently said, has become the party of war. To help me break down the very latest last-minute developments in the most exciting presidential campaign in history and what could be the greatest single comeback in American political history is my co-host, Troy Smith, the editor-in-chief of Slingshot.News.
Roger, as always, an honor to be back with you in the Stone Zone. I look, that was a great opening, by the way. And I look back, you talk about 2016. In 2016, I was a sophomore in high school watching Donald Trump, watching you on InfoWars, watching all that as a 16-year-old. And now, just, a couple years later, we saw in 2020 the theft of our election in 2020. And, that kind of preempted my jump into media here. And just to see this 2024 election, to be here with you on the Stone Zone, it's something else for me and for our country to see how much we've progressed, Roger. To think that before Donald Trump, the answer that the Republicans had put forth was Jeb Bush. To think we've come from Jeb Bush to where we are now with Tulsi Gabbard, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Just the Republican Party, I feel like in these last few years has gone under a total transformation. And we are into a new era of the Republican Party that is more, I think, based in the ideals that created the Republican Party under, the ideals of anti-slavery, of liberty. And that's what I want to bring up here first, Roger, because we have to break down this breaking news that, with momentum seemingly on Trump's side going into this election day, there's been more and more talk of Democrat Representative Jamie Raskin refusing to certify a potential Trump victory. I wanted to get this out of the way right away, Roger, because it's fresh on the mind of everybody. Everybody's talking about it. We have a few clips of Jamie Raskin talking about the election, how he's not going to certify it. We want to play the first clip of him basically explaining this process, explaining why Trump is not qualified to be president, and then get your thoughts on this Democrat plot that they've been, kind of shuffling behind closed doors to potentially stop a Trump victory. Let's roll that.
when I say we will support a free and fair election, no, we're not going to allow them to steal it in the states or steal it at the Department of Justice or steal it with any other election official in the country. If it's a free and fair election, we will do what we've always done. We will honor it.
So, finally, yeah, and that is the Democrats' history. They honor it. That is the big difference between the parties, one of the big. Okay, so...
And on that point, I'll tell you, the political scientists have told us the hallmark characteristics of a fascist political party. Number one, they don't accept the outcome of democratic elections that don't go their way. Yeah. Right? Number two, they embrace political violence as an instrument for obtaining power. And three, they're not organized democratically. They're organized top-down as a cult of a personality around a charismatic or allegedly charismatic figure, right? On the side of the freedoms and equality of the American people, but the court is not going to save us. And so that means the only thing that really works is people in motion, amending the Constitution. But again, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient, because what can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, you know, they want to kick it to Congress, so it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025 to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means. And I'm glad that Sherilyn's creating her new center so we can bring that back to life, even as we're continuing to amend the Constitution, as Professor Hassan has invited us to do.
Yeah, there's even one clip which is even worse, in which he said, well, people can vote for Trump if they want, but the results of the election essentially don't matter. We're not going to certify his election. That's seditious talk. If I said that, the FBI would be at the front door tomorrow. First of all, let's start from the beginning. The Democrats disputed the 2000 election. They disputed the 2016 election. Numerous members of the House voted against the certification and insisted that George W. Bush's election was illegitimate, insisted that Donald Trump's election in 2016 was illegitimate. So the idea that they've always accepted the election result is a bald-faced lie, which is what you usually get from Mr. Raskin. Secondarily, his theory that Donald Trump is legally disqualified or not eligible to be president is based on his opinion. No court of law has ruled that to be the case. So I think that is seditious. Those comments are seditious. I think they are treasonous. And if any Republicans said any of that, well, they would be viciously attacked and perhaps even arrested. But they show their hand here. You see, they really don't care what happens in the states. They love the U.S. Supreme Court when it rules in their favor. They love any federal judge when he rules the way they want them to. But when the courts rule against them, they say ridiculous things like Donald Trump handpicked these Supreme Court justices to overturn Roe v. Wade. Well, Congressman, tell me a president who didn't handpick his Supreme Court justices. And yes, the president has the right to choose justices who share his judicial philosophy. It's called the constitutional Republican system of government, something that Jamie Raskin and his father are intensely opposed to. I'm glad you put that up. There's an additional clip I think that is even more damaging, but if you look at that and you combine it with the recent Department of Defense directive, which for the first time ever authorizes the military to use lethal force against American citizens. If you dig deeper into that directive, it also allows them to spy on Americans. Then you look at Attorney General Garland, who says that anyone who interferes with the election today, but doesn't define interfere, because in their mind, asking questions that connotes interference, will be prosecuted, or that anyone who objects to certification of the election will be prosecuted. Would that include Congressman Raskin if he objects? I think Donald Trump is going to win a majority of the popular vote. I think he is going to win a majority of the Electoral College. And I think that Mr. Raskin and his co-conspirators are going to challenge that. First of all, they'll try to drag the process out. And during that period, you will see a massive campaign by the mainstream media to try to delegitimize Trump's victory. Go to the front page of CNN yesterday. They're recycling the Russian collusion crap. No, they have no evidence whatsoever of Russian collusion, just as they had none in 2016. And when you press them on this, they say ridiculous things like Paul Manafort was sharing polling data with a man named Konstantin Kilimnik, who was a Russian asset. One, there was no proprietary non-public polling information in the Trump campaign at the time, and Mr. Kilimnik is a U.S. intelligence asset. Andrew Weissman knows that. So do all of the conspirators here. So they can say it over and over again, but of course it's not true. Roger Stone was talking to Guccifer 2.0 on Twitter direct messages, and he's a Russian intelligence asset. Yeah, I had a brief exchange with whoever or whatever the entity on Twitter who calls him or herself Guccifer 2.0. It happened 3 weeks after Julian Assange and WikiLeaks had already published all of the material regarding the DNC and Hillary Clinton. The actual content and context of the exchange is benign, proof of nothing whatsoever, and chronologically it could not possibly constitute collusion because it all took place after the fact. Yet when Robert Mueller, who was unhappy with my pardon, wrote a piece for the Washington Post editorial page, a piece we both know was actually written by Mr. Weissman, he said Roger Stone was in touch with multiple Russian intelligence assets. It's a lie. Just like their lie that the Russians hacked the Democrat National Committee. No evidence of that. When my defense attorneys sought to get the famous CrowdStrikes report, which allegedly contained such proof, well, first the judge denied it to my lawyers at trial, but later, when it became declassified, and when Sean Henry, the head of the third-party IT firm CrowdStrikes, testified under oath before the House Intelligence Committee, he admitted that he had no such evidence. There never was any Russian online hack or online hack by anyone of the DNC. And I challenge anyone to produce forensic evidence or expert testimony that would prove otherwise. Unfortunately, John Durham, for some odd reason, didn't address this. So CNN is back to their old tricks of beginning to lay the groundwork for an argument that if Trump won, it has to have been done through some surreptitious foreign interference. It was bunk then, it's bunk now. Meanwhile, you've seen it, Troy, Donald Trump he did 3 rallies yesterday, probably did 4 rallies yesterday, 3 rallies the day before. He's working for every vote. Kamala Harris did 1 rally yesterday. She spoke for exactly 9 minutes and 24 seconds. The Democrats actually know that the jig is up. With early voting closed and now on election day, Democrats are facing a huge turnout deficit. In every single battleground state, we see Donald Trump and the Republicans outperforming elections past in both absentee ballots and early votes. This has never happened before. As we dive deeper into the data, Democrats are facing a precipitous decline in urban turnout, according to their own data experts, while we are experiencing a substantial uptick in rural turnout. Obama's former campaign manager, Jim Messina, said on MSNBC, which is not a news outlet, but a propaganda front for the Democrat National Committee, that the early vote numbers are a little scary. What Messina doesn't tell you is they're scary for the Democrats. According to NBC News, President Trump has a 16-point lead, 56-40, among voters who plan to cast their ballots on Election Day. That is consistent with the Republican norm. Obama's chief campaign strategist, who is now a CNN political commentator, David Axelrod, told CNN that there are no guarantees that Democrat voters will turn out today for Vice President Harris. So Democrats are spinning themselves and reporters by claiming that the vote will be turnout today will show otherwise, which of course is historically completely inaccurate. If Democrats who historically vote ahead of Election Day haven't been motivated to show up so far, why would we expect them to show up today? I think Donald Trump is on the verge of the greatest single political comeback in American history. The last president to serve one term, be defeated in a disputed re-election, and come back to win the White House again was Grover Cleveland, a New Yorker like Donald Trump.
Well, and Roger, I think what we have to realize here is that the numbers are going to look good. And this is my question to you. We have a tremendous problem, and we saw it in 2020 with ballots being dumped in the middle of the night. And I would even say, the way they've been talking about this election, Roger, the way people in the election administrative positions have been talking about it, I would not be surprised if it takes 2 to 3 days for them to come up with an answer in some of these places. And I think that you're going to see the lead, like we saw last time. It's going to be substantial, and then they will begin to chip away. Now, the question that I have for you is, do you think in that scenario, if the Democrats attempt to drag this out 2-3 days in a count, do the Republicans have the legal apparatus in place that they could prevent that, basically allowing the Democrats to get as many votes as they need to win?
The evidence is that they do. I've been very impressed, for example, the way they went to court over the efforts in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, to shut down early voting when the line in Republican precincts got unduly long. They very quickly went to court there, and they prevailed. The way they have been willing to fight over the voter lists and illegals on them in states like Virginia and Texas, there is substantial evidence that they are prepared, much, much better prepared, to fight this out in the courts if that becomes necessary. Now, if you listen to Congressman Raskin, he acts as if the courts have no role here, that it's up to the Congress because the courts won't do their job. No, what he means is the courts might not do what he wants them to do. That's what he's saying. So I think that we will be prepared. I wrote an extensive piece at Substack yesterday in which I made it very clear that part of their game plan is this constant claim that the Republicans who support Trump are preparing to engage in violence. You just heard Raskin say it. No, we have no such plans. In fact, that is most definitely not the thing to do. That's an attempt to goad somebody, to provoke violence by any one individual that they can then use as a rationale to crush the entire MAGA movement. So folks need to keep their wits, keep it legal, keep it orderly, focus on getting your friends out to vote. If you see hard evidence of voter fraud or voter irregularities or anomalies or any improper conduct inside a polling place, contact your local Republican Party, contact the Trump campaign, talk to their lawyers, but then let their lawyers handle that. They would like nothing better than some false flag that would allow them to use the machinery of government to, as they say in their Department of Defense directive, use lethal force against Americans. Don't go for the bait, folks. By the way, I said that on January 5th in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. I said, no, whatever you do tomorrow, do not be goaded into violence. They are the violent ones. YouTube took that video down.
Well, Roger, we know exactly why. And, we make it clear here. We denounce violence. And I think it's important for all of the voices in the conservative movement to be echoing that right now. Especially, and it's only because, Roger, of the Department of Defense's directive. That looks as if that's where they're going to push this. It's not what the MAGA movement wants, but it's what they're going to try to provoke in the MAGA movement. So it's important for everybody. Don't take the bait out there. And, I expect it's going to be dirty tricks on top of dirty tricks, Roger, and we've seen it for many years now. We have a clip that I want to run here because I think it's important with all this talk about Trump questioning the voting machines. And there's a lot of people out there that are saying, oh, this is, he's sprouting election conspiracies. Let's roll this clip of prominent Democrats questioning election machines, questioning elections, because Roger, you alluded to it, they do this every single election cycle. So let's roll that clip and get Roger's thoughts on the flip-flop here and how the Democrats are going to play this. Look, they've kind of cemented themselves in the Trump is going to win category with Raskin out there. If Kamala Harris does win, then they've kind of opened the door for a challenge. It just doesn't seem very politically smart. Let's roll that clip and then get Roger's thoughts.
I continue to think that our voting machines are too vulnerable.
Researchers have repeatedly demonstrated that ballot recording machines and other voting systems are susceptible to tampering.
Even hackers with limited prior knowledge, tools, and resources are able to breach voting machines in a matter of minutes.
In 2018, electronic voting machines in Georgia and Texas deleted votes for certain candidates or switched votes from one candidate to another.
The biggest seller of voting machines is doing something that violates Cybersecurity 101, directing that you install remote access software, which would make a machine like that, a magnet for fraudsters and hackers.
These voting machines can be hacked quite easily.
You could easily hack into them. It makes it seem like all these states are doing different things, but in fact, 3 companies are controlling this.
It is the individual voting machines that pose some of the greatest risk.
There are a lot of states that are dealing with antiquated machines, right, which are vulnerable to being hacked.
Workers were able to easily hack into an electronic voting machine. It was possible to switch votes.
43% of American voters use voting machines that researchers have found have serious security flaws, including backdoors.
We know how vulnerable now our systems were. I know the hackathon that took place last year, where virtually every machine was broken into fairly quickly.
I actually held a demonstration for my colleagues here at the Capitol, where we brought in folks who, before our eyes, hacked election machines, those that are being used in many states.
Aging systems also frequently rely on unsupported software like Windows XP in 2000, which may not receive regular security patches and are thus more vulnerable to the latest methods of cyber attack.
In a close presidential election, they just need to hack one swing state, or maybe 1 or 2, or maybe just a few counties in one swing state.
I'm very concerned that you could have a hack that finally went through.
So much for that. Look, in 2016, I wrote a piece, an op-ed piece for The Hill, in which I expressed my concern, based on talking to multiple experts, that you could hack these voting machines, which are essentially a very rudimentary computer, with a $15 device that you could buy at that time, at Best Buy. And I was excoriated by the creeps at Media Matters for America, and specifically attacked by Hillary Clinton's campaign. Then when she lost, she filed challenges in Michigan and Pennsylvania. And the way that works is you file your general objection, and then you have to provide the specifics on which your challenge is based. In both cases, it was based on an allegation that the voting machines had been hacked, and weren't producing the correct totals. So look, the Democrats are endlessly hypocritical. Trump's concerns are very legitimate. No, don't tell us that Republicans lost in 62 federal cases challenging the 2020 election. That is simply not true. The courts declined to hear 62 cases, most of them brought by elected state attorney generals, and they found some technical reason, usually standing, as an excuse to not hear those questions. If we have a disputed election, and I pray that we do not, well, then we have to hope that the courts will do their jobs. That is unlike Mr. Raskin, who says we can't trust the courts to do our jobs. We'll have to do it. And you heard him call for Civil War conditions. If I said that, well, I'd be on the cover of the New Republic and Atlantic within seconds.
Well, and Roger, you know, we've seen this disconnect with the elites in our country, and particularly those who believe themselves to be elites who really aren't. And I would put Joe Scarborough in that category. You know, he's one of the guys, really a sleazy media guy. And we're going to open it up for you to really hit on him here in a second. But there is a massive problem, I think, within the DC establishment that has come with Donald Trump. And that is, for years, they were able to control the means by which people got into politics. You know, people that didn't have a Harvard education, people who weren't educated at the Ivy Leagues, you know, they struggled really to get into politics. And what Donald Trump has done more than anybody I've ever seen in history is make the common man, maybe the person who only went to high school, maybe went to a community college, that person has more access and has a stronger voice in politics today than he's ever had before. And that's because of Donald Trump, because he is really the voice of that person in our country. And that infuriates people like Joe Scarborough, because he doesn't get to control who has a seat at the table, who has a voice and who doesn't. He went on a really insane rant on his show, criticizing not Trump, but his supporters recently. I want to roll this clip and then get your thoughts. The media is becoming increasingly apoplectic about Trump supporters, and we're seeing, you know, between the Department of Defense initiative, between all these people, Trump supporters are really coming under fire here. They're under the scope. Let's roll this and get your thoughts, Roger.
I will ask the question that I think is a fair question to ask. Who raised these people?
Yeah.
Because they were not raised by anybody in my neighborhoods that I grew up, any middle-class neighborhoods that I grew up in. These people were not there. They were not raised. I mean, they weren't in the classes I went to growing up in elementary or middle or high school or college. They just weren't there. That wasn't the America I grew up in, where people would laugh at the idea of people of the press getting shot. Like, everybody would like sit around and like, what's he talking about? Or again, the
laughing at the Puerto Rican
other
joke.
Things, laughing at the Puerto Rican joke.
My God,
that Puerto Ricans are a pile of trash. Are laughing at a 83-year-old man being bludgeoned nearly to death. That's an applause line. That's a laugh line. Again, who are these people? Where are they coming from, and who raised them, and how did Donald Trump twist their point of view so much in 9 years that the brutalization of an 83-year-old man is something to laugh about, or the shooting of press members is an applause line?
Yeah, laughs and cheers when Trump suggested the press should be shot. And my friend, the legendary photographer at the AP, Evan Vucci, who's traveling with the Trump campaign here, says that as each rally goes on, particularly last night in Georgia, the threats from the crowd to the press, they're there in the arena, only growing. They're really concerned there about the security situation. And that's
you know, this is laughable. First of all, what's amazing is when Joe Scarborough is talking, you can barely see Mika's lips moving. I mean, it's impressive. Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski They loved Donald Trump. They loved laying by the pool at Mar-a-Lago, drinking Donald's booze, eating his food. They fell out with Donald Trump when he was nominated in 2016, and then Joe Scarborough was not on the short list for vice president. Nobody who takes politics seriously is watching MSNBC. I don't get my news from MSNBC for the same reason I don't eat out of the toilet. But this attack on your opponent's supporters is elitism, is what it is. They think they're better than we are. They think they're smarter than we are. If there's hostility by Trump supporters to the press at his rallies, it's because of the way the press has conducted themselves over the last 8 years as a fountain of disinformation and hate. That is sad, but it's understandable. I don't urge anybody to do anything violent to a reporter, but Donald Trump has never said, as Chris Matthews, another man who is so demented with Trump derangement syndrome, Trump is not going to put reporters up against the wall and shoot them. I mean, at least Chris Matthews didn't feel that way when he attended Donald Trump's wedding to Melania at the Bethesda by the Sea Church in Palm Beach. So these rhetorical excesses, whether it is Congressman Dan Goldman from Manhattan's Silk Stocking District, the trust fund baby who bought himself a house seat, he said Donald Trump needs to be eliminated. David Plouffe, who is the Obama operative who's been sent over to try to save Kamala Harris, said that Donald Trump needs to be terminated. Joe Biden, we know, quite famously said it's time to put the bullseye on Donald Trump. This atmosphere of hate, this has been generated by their rhetoric and by their propaganda fronts like MSNBC and CNN. The people who I see attending Trump rallies, particularly the Madison Square Garden rally, these are happy people. They are people who love their country. They're people who go there because Trump has an upbeat, inspiring program for the country, and he lays it out in great detail. He understands that becoming energy independent again, beginning to drill for oil and gas under our own soil and in the lands we own in the Antarctic are the cornerstone to a vibrant economy. He also wants to cut taxes on tips, cut taxes on Social Security benefits, as talked about the very revolutionary idea of doing away with the income tax entirely, because the revenue you would bring in from tariffs, if you had a fair and balanced trade system, would more than compensate for the intrusive income tax system that we didn't really get until 1917. By the way, it's nowhere in our Constitution, of course. Kamala Harris has no program for America. Well, she may have something on her website, but she's never read it. All she wants to do is tell you that Trump is Hitler and his supporters are Nazis. I asked a friend of mine, he was in Madison Square Garden. He was wearing a yarmulke and waving both an Israeli and an American flag. I asked him how he felt about being called a Nazi. He didn't like it too much.
Well, and Roger, especially with what's going on, if we look at where the anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic sentiment is coming from in today's world, it's not from the right. It's from the left-wing college students who are out on the protest chanting "From the river to the sea, wipe out Israel." That's what those people are. They hate the Jewish people. And not only that, Roger, but we had 100,000 Michigan Democrats in the Democrat primary vote against Joe Biden because of his proposed support for Israel. They talk so much about how the right is this Nazi group and we hate, Jewish people. Oh, they hate Jewish people. Where is the anti-Semitic sentiment in America coming from today? It's not coming from the right. It's coming from people on the left who support radical Islamic terrorists who go into Israel and kill Israeli civilians. And I'll add, Roger, the media has been silent about that. They have aided and abetted this message that Hamas terrorists are somehow peaceful people who are just trying to get by. And the more we see it, the more we need to echo it. It's not the right that's anti-Semitic in this country. It's the left. The left has become rabid anti-Semites, and they're going further and further into that, Roger, as they adapt to really this Islamic bloc of voters. And, we don't have to look very far, Roger. Look at the ticket. Kamala Harris, Tim Walz. Why is Tim Walz on the ticket? Tim Walz is on the ticket because Barack Obama tapped Kamala Harris on the shoulder and said, the Jewish governor of Pennsylvania, who you're going to pick, will do terrible for you with the Islamic voters in Minnesota and Michigan. So you have to pick Tim Walz. So I don't want to hear about Nazis, anti-Semitism from the left, who literally based their entire ticket in 2024 off of catering to people who hate Jewish people. It's just absurd, Roger. We have, and it's part of this disingenuous campaign. Kamala Harris, probably the most disingenuous candidate we've ever seen from a major political party, maybe a little bit better than Hillary Clinton, just a little bit. But we have a clip of Kamala Harris caught yesterday telling a family in Pennsylvania to go back inside their house so that she could knock on the door and create an advertisement. Roger, you want to show this clip and then get your thoughts on the most disingenuous candidate we've ever seen for president.
Hey, Max. Well, I want a door knock.
Oh, you want to do a door knock?
Yeah, come on. Okay. Okay, here, I'm going to...
I had your hat on at the Penn State game in front of 111,000 people all day Saturday.
So thank you guys so much. Okay, come on. Thank you all.
Guys, to the right, please.
It is?
First vote.
Yes, yeah.
Tomorrow morning. January.
Yeah, completely phony like her entire campaign. Look, first, they juiced the polls by overpolling Democrats in their sample to try to create this idea that she was surging. They have flooded their campaign with illegal campaign contributions funneled through Act Blue, multiple state attorney generals now investigating that. They have no positive record run on. They're kind of stuck in the same place Hubert Humphrey was in 1968, where he couldn't break with the sitting president he served. And Kamala Harris has admitted that she would do nothing different than Joe Biden has done. And they also, Joe Biden himself says that she was in on every major decision. So she has nothing to run on. So they run on unalloyed hate. Troy, yesterday, thought of you. Somebody, pardon me, I still have this cold I picked up in Madison Square Garden. Somebody gave me a Trump, Vance, Hogan coffee cup. And one of my friends saw it and said, oh, that's kind of strange. Is that for Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Larry Hogan? No, turns out it was for Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Hulk Hogan. So we will have no Larry Hogan cups in my home.
Well, that's very good, Roger. And you don't. If for all your folks out there, if Larry Hogan ever comes knocking on your door, make sure you call the police, because this guy, record. You talk about pedophile after pedophile after pedophile working like right alongside him. And what's amazing, Roger? I've watched interviews that this guy has done throughout. We had a televised debate. We had him doing interview after interview. And nobody, not one person, brought up the fact that he harbored a pedophile in his home. Not one person throughout the entire campaign trail. We're the only people here on the Stone Zone and at Slingshot News that have brought that up at all. It's a touchy subject. I understand a lot of people get weirded out when you start talking about people who have a history of associating with pedophiles, but it's the truth. And, you know, the fact that the media continues to cover that up, Roger, you know, what they refuse to talk about really highlights their bias. It shows why they're so intent on covering certain things and ignoring others. One of the main players in this for many years has been Oprah Winfrey, who many years ago, you know, was a big fan of Donald Trump. I've seen clips where Donald Trump said, you know, years ago, before he ever, you know, actually ran for president, that Oprah Winfrey would be on his short list for vice president. He had appeared on her show many times. They were very close. Then all of a sudden, when he became a Republican, Oprah Winfrey went against him 100%. She was on the campaign trail for Kamala Harris last night, really fear-mongering. I want to get your thoughts on this kind of 180 she's done as it pertains to Trump and what it says about Oprah Winfrey's character. Let's roll that.
If we don't show up tomorrow, it is entirely possible that we will not have the opportunity to ever cast a ballot again.
Yeah, again, there's only one possibility that we'll never have another national election, and that is if Kamala Harris, in the authoritarian regime that she represents, is elected. And having a billionaire tell us, you know, that aspiring to be rich, there's something wrong with that. Look, this is a joke. I've got some numbers here I want to go through. Let me do that. Let's look at some of the early turnout stuff and analyze that, if we may. In Arizona, urban turnout is down 285,000 votes compared to this point in 2020. Female turnout is down by 170,000 votes compared to the same point in 2020. Rural turnout is up 14,000 votes compared to this point. In Georgia, urban turnout is down by 153,800 votes compared to this point in 2020. Female turnout is down by 46,000 votes compared to this point in 2020. Rural turnout is up by 171,000 votes compared to this point in 2020. In Michigan, urban turnout is down by 321,523 votes compared to 2020. Female turnout is down 204,000 votes compared to this point in 2020. Rural turnout is up by 55,000, almost 56,000 votes compared to this point in 2020. In North Carolina, where you'll recall the 29 counties affected by the horrific hurricane were mostly red counties, but nonetheless, urban turnout is down by 175,000 votes. Female turnout is down by 154,000 votes. And rural turnout is up by 26,000 votes. Nevada, female turnout is down by 191,000 compared to 2020 in the early voting. And urban turnout, which would be Las Vegas and Reno, is down by 191,000 votes. In Pennsylvania, which we both agree is probably the key to this election, urban turnout is down by 381,000 votes compared to 2020. Female turnout is down by 450,000 votes, 500,000 votes almost, in early voting compared with 2020. In Wisconsin, urban turnout is down by 100,000, while female turnout is down by 238,000. So this canard that women are voting and men are not, and that's bad for Donald Trump, that is fictitious, typically fictitious.
Well, and Roger, I wanted to ask you, specifically about our state of Florida, our shared state of Florida here, because I've had, as you probably do, you have people constantly ask you, like, what should I vote for? What should I vote for? One of the things that people consistently ask me about is Amendment 3, which is the legalization of recreational marijuana. We've talked about it on this show many times. And I've gotten voicemail after voicemail from Republicans in the state of Florida who claim to be supporting and representing Governor Ron DeSantis, who are saying, don't vote for Amendment 3. It'll turn Florida into California. We've seen the sheriffs come out with advertisements saying that it will kill your children and that it's poisoning babies. It seems that the Florida power structure, especially the DeSantis people, are really railing against Amendment 3. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Is that going to spell disaster for this amendment in this election? Do you think it will prevail with the support of former President Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, it's important to note that this is only on the ballot as a constitutional amendment because our legislature refuses to deal with the issue. Florida already has medicinal marijuana, which is legal, but even though it was overwhelmingly approved by the voters, the Republican legislature and then Governor Rick Scott set up a system that was bureaucratic, expensive, user unfriendly, and extremely limited in terms of the illnesses, pardon me, that you could get cannabis for. That, I think, has created the desire for broader legalization. However, in Florida, a constitutional amendment requires 60% of the vote to pass, not 51. And therefore, it's a very high barrier. I'm not privy to their polling. I don't think the Amendment 3 proposal is ideal by any means. But if someone in my family had cancer and they couldn't really navigate through the state's medicinal system, well, I'd be voting for it. President Trump has endorsed it because members at Mar-a-Lago, older citizens, have told him that they get relief for their various illnesses from cannabis, but the current medicinal cannabis program in many cases doesn't cover the illnesses they suffer from, and therefore they cannot legally buy it under the current system. We also have, as you know, Amendment 4, pardon me, and Amendment 4 pertains to abortion. Now, try to get a copy of all of the wording of Amendment 4 online. Look for it. It's almost impossible. The entire focus is on the 6-week limitation on abortion, meaning you could not get an abortion after 6 weeks. I'm pro-life, strongly pro-life, but I'm also a political realist and don't think the voters will accept this. This law was put in place by Ron DeSantis in an effort to get to the right of Donald Trump in the Iowa caucuses among evangelical voters and certain pastors. What there is no focus on is the fact that in this bill, pardon me, there's no limitation on abortion in the 8th and 9th months. The Democrats would have us believe that that literally never happens, but there are 10,000 such abortions in this country every year. I will be voting no on Amendment 4. But both of those amendments have the tendency to bring out more Democrat-leaning voters. I think they'll be a little surprised on Amendment 3. A lot of libertarians I know are voting for Amendment 3 and also voting for Trump. We shall see. Go ahead.
I think, Roger, it's going to be very telling in Florida. I think there's a lot of people out there who view Florida as a solidly red Republican state. I think they're going to be proven wrong tonight. I think that Rick Scott will prevail. I think that Republicans will prevail in the state of Florida, but it's going to be a lot closer than people thought. And I think a lot of that has to do with Ron DeSantis, who, I don't think really, based on my investigations, because I looked into how he operated in 2022, how he operated in 2018. And I can tell you just from my investigations, that he had PACs that were aligned with him that were paying local election boards a lot of money. They were paying them hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the largest counties got the most money. And if you look at the turnout and the numbers, you say, okay, well, there's money exchanging hands here. I'm not really sure about this. And when you look at the numbers for 2024, Roger, despite the fact that DeSantis says that he's pro-Trump and that he's supporting President Trump, we just don't see that money. So I would expect it to be very close in Florida. And I know that you are somebody who has warned people about that over and over again. Florida's not the solid red state that a lot of people would have you believe.
No, I think it's a purple state. I do think the president will win here. I think it's particularly important to get out and vote for Rick Scott. Rick Scott would make an infinitely better U.S. Senate majority leader than John Thune, the rhino from, I guess it's Nebraska. But Chuck Schumer has dumped millions and millions of dollars. Troy, I'm sure you're seeing it where you are. You can't turn on the television or the radio without getting a commercial for Rick Scott's opponent. So if you're living in Florida and you have the misguided view that it's in the bag, that Trump is going to win by a landslide, no, folks, it's competitive. I think Trump leads. I think he will win, but every vote will count. You know, Troy, I'll tell you what's weird is, as you can see, I picked up a nasty cold in Madison Square Garden. That's probably what happens when you shake hands with 400 or 500 people. And I went to go get cough medicine at the drugstore, and you have to show a photo ID before you can buy over-the-counter cough medicine. But you don't need to show voter ID in order to vote in many, many states. To me, this makes no sense whatsoever.
I know it doesn't make any sense, Roger. It's a very basic thing. And we have to ask ourselves, the Democrat response to this that they come up with is that poor people, particularly they seem to target African Americans in this, to say, oh, you know, they can't afford to get an identification card. They can't get an ID. I mean, that's literally what they say. And that's not me like concocting some kind of statement. They go on TV and say, this is targeting Black Americans because Black Americans can't get identification. If that's not racist, if that's not the dog whistle, Roger, I don't know what is. And I want to see going forward, Republicans kind of find a better way to combat that narrative, because I get people talking to me all the time and they say, Troy, why do Republicans not bring up voter ID? It's such a simple thing. And I say, well, it's very simple. If you do bring it up, the mainstream media, like they've done with you, Roger, accuses you of plotting an election coup. And then they go on and say that you are a racist and you're trying to prevent Black people from voting. And in some instances, they've even locked people up for posting memes about the election, saying they're interfering with it. That's where we're at in this country, Roger. And if we see Kamala Harris win tonight or wherever this is certified, I think we're going to see this country step further into that. You can expect more cases like we saw with the beloved squirrel Peanut, where he's executed and euthanized. We could see people, more instances like you saw with FBI agents crashing through your door. Regardless, the actions, the words that we've reviewed here today of all these people in Washington, D.C. heading into this election, very dangerous. You know, it's very dangerous that we have people like Jamie Raskin in Congress talking about civil war, an elected member of Congress talking about civil war if the election doesn't go the way that he wants it to go. Donald Trump's never said that. The Republicans have never said that. But the establishment, aligned with Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney, all these people, that's what they're saying right now, and it's extremely dangerous. We all have to pay attention to that, I think, Roger.
So let me talk to you about tonight, if I may, Troy. Tonight, I will be doing some election commentary. First of all, right here at Worldview Tube. You'll be able to see me there. Also with Colonel Douglas McGregor and Republic. I'll be on with Amanda Grace and her ministry. Also with InfoWars and Alex Jones. I'm also joining Luke Rutkowski in the Best American podcast. And then lastly, I'll be on with my friend Stephen Gardner. So you'll be able to see me tonight, any of those places, talking about the election. I'm glad this election is over, at least this phase of it. I don't think we will have a result tonight. 3 secretaries of state, in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania have jointly announced that they can't possibly have results tonight. So if the people in France can count 38 million paper ballots in one day, and pardon me, and we, I have to laugh at that, and we, with computerized voter systems, can't come up with a result in even 48 hours, you have to ask yourself what's going on. All right, we have to wrap it up there. Folks, I want to remind you, please go over to Rumble and make sure you follow us there. You can do it by going to rumble.com/Roger Stone. Follow the Stone Zone, then set a notification for yourself so you see the show. Beyond that, get out there and vote and take 5 of your friends or family members with you. On behalf of my co-host, Troy Smith, and I thank you again for joining us in the Stone Zone. And I know in the comments, I'm going to get a lot of advice on how to deal with this cold. Thank you, and God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?